Hello and welcome to Pat O'Keefe's World of Curiosities. And we tonight have our bi-monthly special that we do every month, well, twice a month, and that's Zeea and Pat's Witchy Wisdom. And Zeea, what's on the docket tonight?
Thanks everybody for joining us tonight. Or whenever you're watching this, we're filming it every evening. But thank you for joining in to watch another episode. So what we're going to talk about is like natural curiosities and stuff that we can find around the house that has, magical properties. Really when you're growing up as a young, strange or witchy person, you recognize that everything around you is magical. The whole world, there's magical objects, like maybe just even a rock you found on the ground could have significance to you, and you want to pick it up and take it with you, and you keep that memory of that day. Things like that, or a feather. And, we're also going to talk about, like, historically, like magical charms that people have used and taken with them for luck, money, what have you. So, first of all, let's talk about this is a black pine cone. And the pine cone represents the pineal gland. That's why it's called the pineal gland, because it's pine cone shaped. And you'll see that another reason it's special is it's got the spiral formation. It formed in a spiral. So it's, associated with eternal life, wisdom, and our intuition. The third pineal gland is the third. So it's a very spiritual object, to me anyway. And the Celts, the Celts seen it as a fertility charm.
And the one that I am going to start off with is something that is kind of rare and yet common in these mountains, and that is a snake skin. You'll see his little eyes and his little head right there, and it has so many meanings. As we know, the serpent in religion has held both high and low esteem, depending on the path that you may follow. But the skin itself, if you're going to use a fertility rite of some sort, if you're wanting to bring in new life, then that is one of the things that you might use in a spell. And the reason is because it molts, right? It loses that skin, and it's seen as, like almost giving birth to the new snake that is now larger and healthier than it was before. So in that vein, it also represents like health, right? Because again, it's getting rid of the old, which may be holding it back. And that connects also with transformation. So you're transforming from one thing to another, almost like a butterfly, a new chapter in your life. So if you're wanting transformation, if you're wanting to move to, say, a higher frequency, if that's one of your goals, and this is something that you might use in that transformation of the soul into a higher frequency. It might be if you're, doing a goodbye ritual to someone that is in the process of passing over, then this is something that you may use in order to give them the last hell and goodbye. See? Hell and goodbye. We will miss you. Not hell, Hell, HAL. I thought I'd quantify that, just clarify that just in case. And then, of course, they are symbols of changes that you want in your life to come. So as we might not think of it as something to use, say, in a love spell. And by the way, I always say, if you're doing a love spell, do not target an individual, right? You don't want to mess with somebody's free will. But if you're doing a general love spell to bring love into your life, then a piece of a snake skin may be something that you want to use with that, right? Because of the transformation and the change that you wish to come into your life using this natural substance that's discarded by the snake and is no longer needed. Now, it's also used in healing. Again, that whole idea of leaving, like sickness behind, or a state that is not as full as the state that the snake now is in, having left, the old behind and now taking on the new veneer or the new essence of having been reborn. So health, because we want to be reborn from sickness into health. And so that's what we're wanting to do. And it's also seen in initiation ceremonies because you're shedding the old. So, say you're going to be self-initiating into a path, then this is something that you may use in that initiation. So, there's so many different things to be used for it, including intuition. So, if you're wanting to increase your intuitive path, to take yourself to the next level of, say, psi ability, and you're wanting just a little bit of a boost, then this is something that you may want to do or use.
So, yeah, as a kid, I always was picking up cool looking things off the ground because that's what I think of. Like, when I think of curio, that's just short for, curiosities. And I have a curiosity shop. So I'm all about collecting interesting things. And especially if it's free, and something that you can use in your magical practice. And basically everything in nature has a magical purpose and correspondence, and that's the whole thing about folk magic, or practical magic, sympathetic magic, is finding those correspondences. And so one of these things, we have a buckeye tree near our house. This is what they look like, and they're called, I guess, buckeyes because they look like a deer, I suppose. And these, you can't eat these; they're poison. But my granny, she wanted a buckeye tree. I guess she saw one on her travels some point, and she took a little cutting of it and grew a nice big tree, and it's still there, to this day. And that's how I collected those buckeyes. But when I was researching a little bit about it, it talked about how German settlers, whenever they were over in Germany, they had the horse chestnut. And it was believed that if you carried one of those with you, it helped you with rheumatism, and it was like a health charm. So whenever they immigrated to America, lived in Appalachian, the eastern U.S., they put the same properties onto that buckeye. So yeah, people carried it as a magical charm in their pocket. And also in other traditions, it's used to draw money to you, prosperity, luck.
The next thing we'd like to share with you all is simply plants that you find around. This is a marigold. In fact, there's a bud there and it's getting ready to bloom out, which is always beautiful. And the marigold has so many meanings. In fact, many marigolds you can eat. All right, it can actually be a source of food, but always make sure that something has not been treated with pesticides or poisons or something like that. Always wash your food, kids, if you can. I always do. And I will tell you that the marigold, we're talking transformation. Again, this is something that you could use in conjunction with the snakeskin if you were doing something for transformation. Healing, again, the same thing. Regeneration. And when you think about it, the snakeskin also regenerates, the snake. And so you can use the marigold in that way, connecting the two energies in a ritual, for transformation, for regeneration, and then renewal. Again, this whole idea of renewing, and most, I guess, commonly known is the marigold is connected to the sun. So if you are trying to reach, that sun energy, that male energy, which, the sun is considered in many paths, male energy, and the moon is feminine energy, then you can use the marigold. So you've got warmth, happiness, joy, all of those emotions are, pulled into this marigold. And when you think about flowers, they all have a language. In fact, it's called the language of flowers. So it symbolizes positivity, protection, new beginnings. And here's the other thing, it can also be associated with darker emotions such as jealousy, grief, despair, and mourning. So it's a very good flower if, again, that long goodbye. It's a good one that if you want to do something to help the spirit, of someone that is passing, to leave in a very comfortable, warm, and I know this sounds, the antithesis of what we think about death, but it can actually be a warm embrace by divine energy. And that's what we want for our loved ones. So again, you can use it for that. But there's an entire language, that we're looking at. I mean, the daisy represents, innocence, and think about it as simplicity, new beginnings and true love. Now, think about that. We always think about the red rose representing true love, but the simple, beautiful, common daisy is often associated with that. So, again, it's something that you could use in that love spell, right? All right. And just another couple, we've got violets. Violets are so common. They really are. So you've got modesty, faithfulness. So not only are we doing a love spell, but we're going to add some of that, right? So that we not only have love, but we bring a faithful lover into our lives, a faithful partner. So, it represents virtue, and most importantly, and this is why you need it for those love spells, the simple violet, it represents everlasting love. All right, so such a beautiful thing. And just one more, baby's breath, which, think about it, it's in just about every wedding that you'll see. The bride will carry baby's breath in that, the corsage the man wears, the groom, and in her bouquet of flowers. So what does it mean? Well, it means, again, everlasting love. So if you're thinking about putting flowers into that love spell, that's another one to put, is simple baby's breath. Innocence, purity of heart. Now think of it. We've already used the violet in order to, get that faithfulness. Now we want a purity of heart, right? We just don't want to capture someone and by magic create a situation where by that magic he's stuck, right? No, we want to bring the right energy into our life. So it also represents caring and sincerity. So we can see what would be commonly used in bouquets, in the United States and in Europe. But there are so many flowers, and each one of them has a different language.
Yeah, you were speaking about all the different languages of flowers, and it's wild because in Victorian times they used different flowers to mean different things. And I've got one here, but I just wanted to say about when we were kids, we'd have a daisy and be picking off, he loves me not. That was sort of a way of like divination and some like a little game that kids would play, sort of, or. And then there's the dandelion, you blow it to make a wish. So that's just like little magical things in itself. And then, people would find and collect four-leaf clovers and carry that as a good luck charm. And then, so similarly to that, I've got five-finger grass, as it's called. I think you could see that there. So that, in a way, is sort of like a four-leaf clover. And it's cinquefoil, yeah, also known as five-finger grass, and false strawberry because it looks like strawberry leaves, but it doesn't put off any little fruit. But so this is like a little charm you could carry with you to bring money and luck, like you would with the four-leaf clover. And it's, yeah, five-finger grass because you use it to hold on to money, hold on to stuff. You're trying to attract money or use it like like a lucky charm, put it in your left pocket. And also similarly holding on to things in the springtime. And here in my yard in Appalachia, we have cleavers, which it's like a prickly plant. You can pick it up really easily. It's not, attached to the ground. And it tries to smother out other plants. So you can just pick that, and that can be used as for a spell to hold on to things too, like, and bring things to you and hold on to it.
And what I would like to share is, expanding on that or expounding on that is, just using common plants that we may have growing outside or that we come across in nature. And right here, I'm going to show you this is kind of my sad little example, but I promise you, I have huge containers outside full of this stuff, but they're just way too big to bring in. But this right here, this beautiful little herb is basil. And we don't think of basil as protection a lot. I mean, we always seem to go to sage. That's where our memories take us, if you will. But basil actually has great protection powers that you can use and is used in things like that. You can use them in like sachets, right? That you can carry with you with other things like maybe black tourmaline or obsidian, something that you could add to it so that we have kind of a protection sachet. And that's a simple one because you're only using basil and the crystals. So, that's an easy way to do it. Now, sage is known for cleansing energy, being able to go to a house and cleanse it in order to get rid, if you will, of bad energy. Now, there's some controversy within the community, and I always call it the paranormal community, but witchy community, whatever you want to call it, that this is a closed practice. It should be left to Native American people. Now, I always say my philosophy is if magic works in your hands, then it was meant for you. All right. I tend not to be a closed practicing kind of person. I mean, we're up in the Appalachian Mountains. In my opinion, if somebody takes something that we do, that's creating a longevity for the practice. We don't want things to be forgotten, and it's okay, in my view, to be able to use some of our practices. But sage, whether you use it or not, I don't. It's just not something I feel comfortable with in my own hands. I use salt and salt water for protection and for cleansing. It just feels comfortable for me, and it makes sense because primarily my ancestors were Celtic and also the the northern nations of Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. So I have Viking blood. So of course, the sea was such a part of their existence, and so the salt water would have played in their hands. And I'll just do one more as an example, because one of my favorites, and I have it growing too, and for some reason, and y'all can give me some advice down below, I have trouble growing it. I finally got an incredible plant growing, and it is just beautiful. I feel so happy and proud of myself that I finally got that. I don't know, for some people it's easy. If you've got any tips that I can use to grow lavender in the Appalachian Mountains of western North Carolina, you let me know. I'd like to hear that. But we'll talk about, what it does. Well, we're talking about calm and tranquility. And so, its soothing properties, the smell of it, just immediately begins to calm the mind and the spirit. And so, again, we may use that in sachets. We can use it in oils along with sage. You can use sage in that protection water that I was talking about with the salt. You can put sage in it. You can put any herbs really in that particular concoction of protection. So lavender, it's one of my favorites. It's definitely, when we talk about aromatherapy, it's probably one of the most common. And we know in this hectic world, which Zia can attest to, and anybody else listening, having that lavender, that aroma, having something natural that kind of stills the mind and refreshes the soul is invaluable. But there's so many others, and unfortunately, we can't get to it tonight.
Yeah, we could do a whole episode on different herbs and plants, and comment below if you'd like to see an episode like that, because we could do a whole episode talk about the correspondence and historical uses of these different herbs and flowers. And we could do a whole episode on the next thing I'm going to talk about. It's the type of rock. So we could do like a whole episode on crystals and, all that kind of jazz too. But this next one here is starlight. Might not can see it well in there, but these are also known as fairy stones. Here's one that's more perfect. So it's a cross. Staros meaning cross. Hold on. Now, it's kind of blurry, but you can see it pretty good. So there's the Fairy Stone Park in Virginia, and you can go there and collect your fairy stones. So these are some that I got. So they're not like perfectly across, but they all form in that little cross shape. So they're really interesting little rocks. And there's a couple different legends behind them. And the main one, I guess, is that the fairies, when they heard about the death of Christ, they cried and their tears formed these little crosses. So that was kind of interesting. And then I think there may be Cherokee legends about the little people too, which is the same thing. They're fairy folk. Um, but these are good for protecting you from any kind of evil magic. They're protection talisman, and they bring good luck too.
And I love the way that, we're talking about so many natural elements. And another natural element is, since you mentioned stones, Zia, is the hagstone. And
Yeah,
I particularly love the hagstone. And I looked all over for mine, and I apologize. I could not find it because we were wanting to not only tell but show.
yeah.
But
I
the
was wanting to
hagstone,
find mine too, but I couldn't find one either. But I thought about that as well. That's a good
But the
one.
hagstone has so many magical properties to it. Have you ever wanted to see a fairy? Well, if you do, then hold a hagstone, all right, and call to the fae, and always go to where it feels like there is fairy activity. You don't want
Mhm.
to force the fae to come to you. You always, in this case, would go to them, or that's how I feel, all right, because we are asking them to manifest themselves. And so, it has the ability, this is kind of funny. If you're afraid of witches, then hold a hagstone. And don't forget that it's all in how we manifest our belief, right? Our faith. And I always say there's a whole movie, it was called Skeleton Key, which I thought was really interesting. And it's the whole premise is based on we cannot get magic to work unless you believe. All right. So it's a really good movie. So, check that out. Okay, so you can also use it for fertility spells. Again, we go to this whole idea of fertility, and fertility doesn't just have to mean human fertility. You can use it, if you're doing a ritual to bring bigger crops in, say you need a really good crop this year. And so you can use that, in this whole idea of fertility. And also, if you want to bring to fruition something, like you have a big, something big happening at work and you wanting to bring that home, so to speak, and to complete it, to make it a reality, to be successful at it, then this is something that you may want to use. And this is what I love about it too. It can ward off ghosts. So if you are somebody that is having some trouble in the house with a nightly spirit, say, and it's causing you discomfort, then a hagstone is something that you may want to hang in the house. Specifically, I would recommend wherever the activity is taking place, or if you're being sleep disrupted, it could be something that you hang in the room to protect yourself. And let us not forget, it also holds within it the power of protection. So this is something that is extremely powerful, and it's so simple. It's just a natural hole that has been worn into a stone. So if you find one along a riverbank or a creek, or if it is given to you as a gift, understand that this is a very powerful thing. It's not a simple stone. It contains amazing magic.
Well,
Uh,
there's so many more things we could talk about. You guys just let us know in the comments what you want to hear about. We could do a Magical Curios part 2. We could do a whole one about different types of rocks. Yeah, crystals and rocks, and one about herbs. Whatever y'all want to hear about, or do another one similar to this, a part 2. But yeah, remember to like and subscribe, follow us and everything. Yeah, but thank you for watching.
yes, to our audience out there, thank you for watching. And Zia, it's always a pleasure to do this with you. You're such a lovely soul.
Oh, you too.
And to our audience, I always say, because it is so true, without you, it would be a very lonely place. So we hope to see you. And just to let you know, I'm going to be appearing at Haunted America in a couple of weeks. I think it's the 21st. I'm terrible with dates. So that weekend. Anyway, I look forward to seeing all of the people that I normally see there and new friends. It is in Alton, Illinois. It's a wonderful event put on by Troy Taylor, who is an excellent author, by the way. If you have any chance to get his books, do so if you like things that are haunted or murderous, because he also writes about, old and new, mostly older though, murder mysteries. So, a shout out to Troy. And as always, until next time, stay
Stay
curious.